Welcome to Inspired Living with Carrie Murphy, the podcast, where as your host each and every week, I am going to inspire you and empower you to share your message and step into that big vision you see for yourself. I'll be bringing you celebrity interviews, influencer insights, and my personal tips from decades as an on-camera talent, TV host, media expert, and entrepreneur, so you can build a brilliant seven-figure brand. Because when you're inspired, you inspire others. So let's go. You have an amazing product or service that you are dying to get out into the marketplace. You see everyone else launching online, doing the $1 million launches, and you're struggling with what is the right path for you. Maybe you've tried to launch something and you literally feel like you need to own the t-shirt, failure to launch. Well, have no fear, my friend, because today's interview with Destinee Burman is going to really shed some light on what's working and what's not working, things to consider before and after you launch. Listen, I love this conversation so much because there are people out there looking for you right now. And as Destinee said, the sooner you launch, the better. We need to get away from the shame of not launching big enough or not doing it right, because entrepreneurship is about failing forward. And as we said, failure simply feedback. And in this interview, again, if you're ready to launch a product, if you want to know what's working right now, Destinee and I have a great conversation around launches. No more failure to launch, my friend. And hey, if you want to see what we're doing at Inspired Living around launches, come join our private Facebook group. It's called Ignite Your IT Factor. We host a masterclass and challenges in there, and you can literally see what we're doing to generate a seven-figure business. And by the way, it's one way. There are lots of ways. You need to find your way, and hopefully you'll get a little clearer on what that is in this amazing Inspired Living episode with Destinee Burman. All right, Destinee, it is so great to have you on the show today.
Thanks so much for having me, and I'm thrilled to be here to have this conversation.
A conversation we've been needing to have for a hot second. Now, I am all about transparency, and I just have to say what I love about entrepreneurship and motherhood and all the things is that sometimes things get a little messy. And I had actually booked this interview with Destinee a couple weeks ago, and we started off just chit-chatting, and she asked me the really hard question of how are you? How are you? And I was having a really rough morning. As you know, our nanny called in sick. Everyone was in a tizzy around the house. Lauren hadn't started school yet. Landon is crying. And it was one of those days, the days where just the vibration is a little tough. And so when you ask me the question, I'm like, I cannot believe I broke into tears. I'm like, here I am, the host of the podcast with my guest who I'm so excited to interview. And I just lose I lose it. And you were so gracious and so wonderful. You're like, we don't have to do it today. I'm like, thank you. Thank you. Today is a much better day. But I think that's, I wanted to start off with that because how many times, Destinee, do we look at everyone's profile, or we look at our friends, or we look at our peers and go, oh my God, like, is it always good? Like, do they ever have a bad day?
Yeah. And it's funny you bring that up, because on social media, things can be so highly curated. And even though we moved right into the stage of we're going to be transparent, we're going to show how things are behind the scenes, we still need to choose what to show behind the scenes. So,
right.
It's just so easy to get caught up in this belief that everything is non-messy and that it's clean and we're in control. And being moms and parents, like, that's just not possible. So
right. That's the misnomer. We're actually think we're in control.
Exactly.
News alert.
It's not possible.
All right. Well, I'm really excited actually to have you on, Inspired Living TV, because first of all, I love what you do. You have an incredible background, from Silicon Valley to, in the last 6 years, helping generate over $17 million. I mean, hello. So we're talking launches today. We're going to talk about a lot of things, but why I was excited to have you on this show is because I think, again, kind of going back to social, Everyone's launching all the time. We launch, you launch, he launch, we launch. And I think when someone's starting out or they have a product or service that they've spent so much time developing and now they're ready to get it out there, like failure to launch is a real thing. It's a real thing. So let's go back, first of all, and tell us a little bit more about your background and why you chose like to help people with launches. I think, what is it? The launch midwife. I love that. I got a little chuckle because you know what? We all need someone to help us birth our dreams. And, again, we get so caught up in the launch craze. And I cannot tell you how many people come to me and they're like, I tried it. It didn't work. No one came, failure, failure, failure. And I'm like, no, it's all just part of the growing process. But I'm with a launch expert today. So take us back and then we'll move forward.
Well, first I have to say that it's impossible to always be in the know on all things launches because in itself just has so many different elements, right? We're thinking product or program, we're thinking traffic and eyeballs. And then we have the digital landscape that's always evolving. And so, to answer your question with how I even got here is one, I love the birthing, the innovation and the creation process. Two, we see the reach and impact of internet technology and software.
Yeah.
And, we're just at this time, even though I started this 6 years ago, now we're even at another precipice of, wow, our knowledge, our passion, our creations getting out into the world in this bigger way. So it brings together all these elements that are very exciting. And yet the day-to-day, as you brought up failure, one of the things that I've been working with is there's no failure, only feedback. And that's an NLP teaching, that's not mine. But we also have to live with the day-to-day of how do I continue to get more traffic? How do I continue to message this in a way that is clear? And so it requires us to be deeply committed to our work and deeply committed to this process of marketing.
Right. Right. So when people come to you, where are they normally at in their business, in their strategy? Do they have product? Do you help them like come up with what they're going to launch? Like take us through that journey.
Yeah. So typically the folks who come to me have expertise, they have experience, they have a business. It could be a one-on-one business, it could be a brick and mortar. So they do have some type of practice and business that they're working with. And what they don't know what or how to do is how to translate that into digital content and how to market it online. Yeah. Because that marketing from a referral, local one-to-one to one-to-many just requires a different mindset and a different skill.
Yeah.
So a lot of them do have content, but then how do we package it up? Like, how do we put this into an offer stack that makes sense, that increases their profitability? And how does this make sense for their business and their values?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think so many of us come to the table with our expertise, but this whole online world is another beast that we have no idea like how to get it out there. So when they come to you, they usually have some content, they have an idea, and then you help them actually like create the stack, put it out there, and figure out how to get it in the hands of the people who need it. So what are you seeing right now? What are some trends that you're seeing? I know there's all sorts of launches. We at Inspired Living do a lot of live launches where we do, a masterclass to an offer that has worked really well for us. But I'm curious like what you see and what's been working. And for someone that has maybe tried launches and they're just really struggling, what's the common denominator that you see? Like what's the main struggle?
Well, I would say the thread among all stages of business, whether you've launched before or you're looking to grow your launches, is your audience size. Because if you don't have an audience size to launch to, or you continue to grow your audience size, at some point you will hit that limit or that ceiling. So that's one. The second thing is in terms of launch funnels, I think people overthink it, right? We know that masterclasses work. We know that video series works. We know that having some type of paid offer in the front end works. I think that where people often miss is really understanding, well, what are my goals? Because if you want to create $1 million a year versus $1 million a month, that's going to require
different goal.
Exactly. Different strategies, different funnels, and different traffic levels. So one is really working backwards from what your goals are. And two, also to really understand what your assets are. I mean, someone who is just launching the first program can get to a 6-figure launch, but that's just a different playbook than someone who's launched a couple of times. And now they need to add paid traffic to their toolkit to grow faster. So I think we often look at what other people are doing and they think, well, now I'm just going to copy them because they've been successful. But you need to understand your stage of business and also what your goals are.
Oh my gosh, so true. Yeah. I mean, it's a numbers game more than anything else. And I think we have to remember it's not personal. We take it so personal, right? Like every time we launch, we're like, oh my God, I'm horrible or I'm wonderful or whatever it is. And it just really is a numbers game. And when you know that, and like you just said, you can reverse engineer it for the number that you want to create. But what people fail to really understand, at least in my experience, I'm not an expert like you are, is that it actually takes money to make money. Do you agree? Do you not agree? Like when people are just starting out and they want a 6-figure launch, do you think that people can do that and not have an audience or not have a budget, I should say?
So, this one is tricky because it does require investment to make money if we're thinking about this as a business, right? I mean, there's no way you can have a startup and not have investors or some type of funding. So one is going into this with a different mindset. Okay, well, I am starting a business. This is not just a one launch wonder. And so what resources will it take? But the other thing is we also can't buy our way in. And this whole concept of just going after paid traffic to get to that bigger launch, your profitability will decline. And so it's a combination of where do I really want to build community? And then how am I playing the paid traffic game against organic community building? So I think that's just something we need to consider. And, there is, we are seeing a saturation in the space. I think last year there was overconsumption of online courses when everyone had to stay put. And then now people are feeling overly consumed and very full. And so now it's about, are we tapping into new markets or are we doing better with our existing buyers? Like what else can we facilitate to encourage more price points and a mutual exchange? And so I think it's forcing entrepreneurs who've been in this space for a while to rethink how they're going to do their business.
Time to get innovative, people. Yeah.
Right.
Because I will tell you, what's so funny is that, for the last decade, I've taught people how to be on camera and how to grow their business and grow their audience and their visibility. And it was like 2020 was the year everyone decided, okay, now I'll do it. and I get it. I totally understand why, because they're forced to. They're home. Everything's virtual, and we saw a huge saturation, right, of people showing up online, offering things online. I think some people really scaled and were able to grow their business while others feel like they get stuck in the content confusion, I think, that's out there. I mean, there's no lack of content, right? So when you're looking at helping someone get their product out there, what are some of the things that you ask them? I know you ask like the why and what do you want to make, but I'm so curious, like when you're helping someone like define their market or their price point strategy, what are some of the things that you like them to consider?
Well, in terms of the content saturation and the content mess, which I'm really glad you brought up, this comes up, I think, with every single person, is you want to have a clear breakdown between marketing content and the course content. And too often when someone starts to get into the marketing path, they confuse the course content with the marketing content.
Ooh, that's good. Break that down for us a little bit more.
Well, for example, if you have a 6-week course, you have your defined course content and you have what I call the course outcome statement. So here's what people are going to achieve from moving through this course. But then what happens is then they start to think about marketing, the webinar, the videos, the landing pages, and then they start to pull out content and put that into the marketing content. And those are two very different things. The marketing content is tied to the course content in itself, but it really is giving people the ahas, but it's a pre-game, right? And so if we think about pre-game versus post-game, that will help us separate in our minds which content is what. And too often I just see it get blurred and then it creates more confusion for yourself.
Like people are sharing the course content as their marketing content.
Or they're pulling it out thinking, oh, this needs to be in my marketing, but then what am I giving in the course?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Right. Makes total sense. And I think that's where you have to understand, where are you meeting your client at? Like, where are they, right? What's the level of frustration? What are they looking for? And you're pretty much like exposing the gap for them, I would think, in the marketing content, and then you're filling the gap for them in the course content.
Yes, correct. Exactly. Exposing, building that trust, right? Building that connection, building your authority. And then you are giving them the full service end to end in the course, because how much can you really do in a 40-minute webinar? I'm sorry, that's just not possible.
Not that much, right? But you can expose the gap. You can help them see,
Absolutely.
right, where they
Yes.
are, where they want to be, and how you feel that. So that's been around for a long time. The webinar model's been around forever. We still see it all the time. Is there something that you feel, let's give them a little insight, a little intel here. Is there something that you feel is really working well right now in this climate versus maybe a year or two ago? Like, is there anything new and exciting that you're seeing? Or is it, oh my gosh, I have to continue to do the webinar, to the call, to the opt-in, to the thing, to the thing, to the thing?
This may not be a popular answer, but I've always believed that there is not just one thing. Right. And so there's really two aspects of the business. It's one, in terms of what's working now. If you're going to get people through a free opt-in, my recommendation is to have a follow-up sequence where you're selling them a lower price offer, to try to offset ad costs, and two, to try to pre-qualify them before you even lead to your bigger, especially high ticket offer.
So good. Yep. So did you hear that? I want to make sure you got this. She said, have a free offer with then a low cost opt-in, or a low cost offer, free opt-in to a low cost offer. I'm also seeing now, and we've been playing with this a little bit too, is actually having a paid opt-in. Do you see that working, or is the free to a low cost working better?
Yes. It depends on what we're looking at. Cold traffic to paid opt-in is trickier. I mean, you have to really nail the messaging. You have to really nail the ads. It does work if you have those elements in place. If you're just newer to the ads game, you're newer to course launches, start with free with follow-up sale. That would just give you a little bit more bandwidth. Personally, I do both. And I think it works really well because you're really addressing both aspects. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing you want to think about is, okay, so that's marketing, you're getting people in.
I just want to say one thing really quick as you continue. So hold that thought, but I want to make sure that the person listening right now, yes, I'm talking to you, that Destinee said she does both. I think so many times we get stuck in, I have to do it one way. Like, I'm going to do it this way, or I'm going to do it this way, when we don't actually test which way works better. So I actually love that you said that, and just want to take a second, because you can play with different things. You can see what's working for my audience, what's working over here. And that's actually how we get any results over at Inspired Living, is we're constantly testing and tweaking and seeing what works for the audience.
Well, and it allows us to be creative, right? I mean, yes, it takes time and energy to create different assets, but it's fun. Like, it can be fun and it can be creative. And I think it's part of the process.
Yeah. So great. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And then the second piece that I think people forget is, so you've got the traffic, you're building up, your list and your audience, is that once people get into and they're a paying customer, you want to think about the offer progression. So you've got your core offer, but how can you have an offer to progress folks who are happy, who want to continue working with you into the next offer? And then you also want to have a more digestible offer for folks who aren't quite ready for your core offer. And I think oftentimes we just forget about how we can maximize profitability and that customer lifetime value.
Absolutely. Customer lifetime value. So just to kind of break that down, are you saying upsell and downsell?
Yes, upsell and downsell. Yes. And you just want to think about the launch sequence, right? So for some folks, they have a upsell that kicks off after after the core offer ends. Mm-hmm. And so you want to think about a sequence as well. Yeah. So it's like they could be in the program 50% into the program, and then you can upsell them to a program that starts next. Mm-hmm. And then the downsell, for me, the way we do it is during the live launch, we'll downsell after the public launch. So it's more about the sequencing.
Yeah, but just understanding kind of that client journey that you're taking people through, because not everyone is going to buy that core or that signature offer. So but they opted in. That's the thing you want to remember. They were interested in what you were teaching. So I love that. So how do you continue the ascension model for them? And I remember a long time ago, Justin Livingston was talking about spiral marketing. He worked with Callan Rush, and I'll just never forget what he said, because, of course we know it's so much easier to keep a client than get a new one. Yeah. But it's like for every result, there's another inherent need. And I've quoted this now for years because it stuck with me that much, because when you think about when you're bringing in someone new and you get them a result, then there's another inherent need. There's another need at the bottom of that result. How do you serve that need? Go deeper. How do you serve that need? And I will tell you, it changed our model completely. Instead of being surface of trying to catch, as I say, stop trying to catch the ocean, right? That you actually brought people through. And we have clients with us for 5 years or more, you know? So I love that. I think it's important for the entrepreneur to hear right now, someone who wants to launch, because you look at your numbers and you look at your conversion and you say, oh, I didn't do very well, but how are you serving those people who said yes? And how are you serving those people who said not yet? Right?
Yes.
What else,
Exactly.
what else is available?
That's right. And you want to give them a reason to continue and to stick around, right? And I think we just forget, oh, they've already invested in us. Like, why would they keep moving along? And I love that. I'm so happy you share that, because now that's
it really stuck with, obviously it stuck with me. And this was years ago I heard it, but I was like, ooh, for every result, there's another inherent need. And I will tell you, we'll have team meetings around what's the next inherent need. Like, we get them amazing and confident on camera. What's next? What's next? What's next? You know, so we drill deeper, instead of going wider, which I think is important right now too, because, and I'm so curious what you think about this when it comes to marketing and launches. I mean, we know it's quoted to be like a $350 billion business in the next couple of years, just online learning. And so it's not too late for someone to get into the launch game, right? But what's going to make them successful at it? Is it like, I really think it's important to like market something that someone really needs. Like, what's the gap? How are you the specialist? How are you the one that shows up as the expert? But do you have that same philosophy, or you're like, hey, you can just be a business coach or a life coach, or
I do. I mean, so one, it's not too late. It is true that the market size is expanding and moving more to mainstream, right? To more mainstream acceptance. Yeah. But this is where, when the world gets bigger, it actually gets smaller. Ooh, and I like that. I like that you use the word specialist, because I do believe that for you to be successful now, given content saturation and the market getting wider, you do need to go more specialized and deeper. Yeah. And so I like the yoga teacher as an example, just because there are a lot of yoga teachers, there's a lot of health coaches. If we're going to do yoga, we'll do yoga for diabetes or yoga for mental health versus just yoga, right? Or life coach. Yeah. What's your area of specialization? So I do think that building the value of the 100 true fans, deeper fans, is going to be the key to one's success when they enter now. And it is important to size the market. So you want to go deep, but you also do want to size the market and look, okay, based on my revenue goals, is this market big enough to support it? You know, I was talking with an entrepreneur the other day, and she's focused on sport coaches or sport instructors. And I looked at the market size. I'm like, great, there's a lot of people here. Like, it makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. You definitely want to do some research, right? Because if there's only 1% of the population who you can market to, that gets a little rough. But we do need, people are willing to pay more for people who are specialized in their industry, who they believe are going to get them a result quicker, faster, easier. So I do think that's important, but you want to make sure there's a viable market for you as well. So.
Exactly. Yeah. And just to support the kind of business you want to build, right? For some folks, they want to build $1 million a year, and some folks want to build $10 million a year. Let's make sure that the market size is there to support that.
Yeah. So good. So again, when someone comes to work with you, you kind of walk them through the whole strategy from beginning to end. They come with the idea, they come with maybe the content, but you walk them through the launch strategy. Because I will say, for most people, at least that come to us, where they know they need to be visible, they want to build their audience, they need to be great on camera usually to do a launch. They're just so overwhelmed with all the options out there and how to do it. And they'll see someone else doing something and go, well, then I'm going to do that. But they're not ready to do that because they're not where that other person is. For example, a paid opt-in. If you have no list and no following and you're only, doing ads to cold traffic, I think that's tough. And we've seen it with our clients. Like, they try it, but it's really tough.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you do want to create a result on top of a result. So again, this is based on where you're at. So if you've got no audience, you don't have proven offer, you don't have proven results with your clients, you're going to want to start more simple and be willing to experiment. So typically, if folks are coming to us and they're brand new, I like to have them launch a paid workshop versus a paid course.
I love that.
Right. That gets them in the game. You teach, you get to prove results, and you get past your fears and your confidence when it comes to teaching online. if you have results, if you have a business and if you have clients to really build off on, so many times we overthink this. It's like, well, why don't we just launch what we've already been known for? And we have the results there to prove it, and then we build upon that. It doesn't have to be this brand new innovative course idea for it to work online.
Right.
And so that's the other thing we want to consider. And then your strategy is inherently informed by what audience size you have, what you've been doing. If you've been blogging for 5 years and you haven't monetized, well, your strategy is going to be different from someone who is just starting out.
Right.
And so this is where you want to build a result on top of each result. And I recommend launching sooner than later, because you won't know and you won't get the feedback until you launch.
So true. And I really love that. I was a former NLP practitioner myself. And failure is just feedback. Like, it's not personal. And I think, any entrepreneur can raise a hand, a foot, and an eyebrow. Like, we've all failed forward multiple times. And it's the only way you grow, is to test it and, like we said, tweak it. And for us, it's really interesting because I was really off put by launches for a long time because I didn't want to be like everyone else. Like, everyone else is doing this, so I want to do something completely different. It's just the way my brain works. But finally, I listened to a dear friend of mine who was like, Carrie, like, you got to trust me, girl. Like, you're teaching video, you got to do this thing. And I promise you, like, you're going to get amazing results. So I acquiesced. It was like, fine. It was right before 2020. And I started doing these master classes that I love so much. They're fun. They're fun for the team. They're a lot of work, not going to lie. But I think what it has taught me about launches is that the more you do them, the better they get. And I know so many people that look at, maybe people that have like a 7-figure business, or they do $1 million a launch, and they think, oh, they did their first one and it was $1 million in their bank account, easy as pie. And I'm like, you know what? You can absolutely work up to that. But I will say that when you have a strategy that works, like you said, like, you're good at something, you're good at something, it's like right at the tip of your nose, like, just rinse and repeat it. And I think for entrepreneurs, we're so bright, shiny object. We're visionary and we're creative. And I will say, talking personally here, I felt like doing something over and over again would make me feel stifled. It would make me feel like I wasn't creative and I wasn't using my entrepreneur powers. But I will say, it's changed our company completely, because we know we can actually count how much revenue we're going to bring in, because we've tested it and done it so many times that it truly is a numbers game. We know if we want to make $1 million, then we have to spend this much and do this and do this. So
right.
It's been interesting for me to learn. I tell everyone that, video is a muscle. I think launch is a muscle too. I think you build it as you do them. You get better at them as you do them. You get to know your audience better. You speak into them better. So like you said, just do it sooner than later, and don't be afraid. Like, I was listening to Tony Robbins the other day, and he's like, my first event, it was of course a long time ago, but he's like, I was 18. I booked a whole conference center, like huge place, and I had 7 people show up. And look at him now. It all starts with 7 people. It starts with one person. And I think that's something that you have to remember, because we all look at these big numbers and we feel like such failures when we don't have them. And you can't get to the big numbers if you don't start with the small ones. That's where you start, right?
Exactly. If you can have one person, that person can turn into 5 and 10 and 50. I mean, I've had clients where their first launch at 35 people, which doesn't seem overwhelming, but we built out whole online schools and whatnot. Yeah. And 3 years later, they're at 3,000. So it's like, you have to start at the number that you're at and be willing to keep moving forward, instead of being blinded, exactly as you said, by these, right. Well, if I don't have that number now, this means this about me. Right. Not true.
Yes. Delete. Yeah. Yes. Not true. So let's talk about, like, what do you do right now to grow your business? I mean, obviously in 6 years, you've grown a very successful business. What were some of the things? So you left Silicon Valley and was like, I'm just going to start, because you were working with like Microsoft and all of these other big companies. Take us back. What were you doing for them? And what was the transition for you? Where was the opportunity that you're like, I'm going to get into this?
Yeah.
Because I know there's a lot of people that might be in a similar space where they feel like they're kind of ready to take that jump. Yeah. And how did you make that?
Well, back then I wanted to reinvent myself, but I didn't really know that. And so I didn't say that to myself, right? Because when I was working in companies, I mean, I was doing that for 15 years. And so
Yeah.
I did a bunch of different things. 2007, when Facebook was just defining social media, I was running
Yeah.
campaigns for Sephora Beauty Insider before that even rolled out in stores.
Wow.
We were creating viral campaigns and testing. And so I've been in the media space for a long time.
And you've been in
And
the launch space in a different way, right? But
exactly,
yeah,
exactly. That's
yeah,
correct. Launching more like B2B campaigns,
yeah.
and marketing automation. The company I was at created and coined the term modern marketing before we sold to Oracle. And
Wow.
so, that's been in my world. I've always appreciated it, but I wanted to reinvent myself. And I could feel that within my blood, I was really meant to be an entrepreneur without knowing what my path was. And so,
Did
you
you
know,
always feel that way?
I did, and I was trying all these side gigs and hustles. Like I started like an online eyelash company, like an like a probiotic company. And so I was trying, but just the level of responsibility I had at work, I just wasn't able to do both.
Yeah.
And finally, I said to my husband, I said, I think I'm gonna have to do something. Otherwise, I'm just never gonna leave, especially when you've got more and more, at stake. And he was supportive. He said, well, just take 6 months off. You can always come back, get a bigger job. Not a huge deal. He was
That's
reassuring.
nice.
It was
Yes.
very reassuring. And so I also saw like 6.5 years ago, I saw how big the online e-learning industry was starting to continue to grow and to expand. And so I just started experimenting. I reached out to folks and I asked them if they were interested in courses. I walked through my background, I targeted certain folks, and I just went for it.
Yeah.
I grew a 6-figure business in about 8 months, and then we just kept going from there. And so, we don't always need to know every single step along the way, but we can trust that prompting and that feeling, and then we learn and we take those steps.
That's right. I often say just take the next right step. And when I mean right, like that intuitive, this is the next step. I know it's the next step for me. And I will tell you that some of those steps are really scary, but when you trust them, I always feel like everything that you need shows up for you. Right? But you have to take the step. The yellow brick road can't meet you if you're not walking. You gotta go. You gotta
No,
go.
it's true. It's true.
Yeah.
And it's being an entrepreneur. Some days you want to quit. Some days you want to
Some
fire.
days you just want to cry.
Yes. And some days you want to just fire all of your team.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't working. Like we have all those things, but
Yeah.
then I look at my path and I look at the previous path, and this is my path. And so there's nothing else one can do except to be on this path.
And how grateful I am that we have the opportunity to choose our own path, that we live in a place where we can say tomorrow, I want to start my own business. I want, create a 6-figure business in, did you say 8 months?
Yes.
I mean, the opportunity is there I really think for everyone. Yes, are there things that you need to understand and learn? For sure. In fact, this being my third business, I can't even imagine not having a coach or a mentor in my life that is guiding me to what I want next. If there's one thing I've learned, it's like what will get you to a certain place, but where you want to go, you have to go and align yourself with people that have been there before you. And I so appreciate what you've shared today. I really wanted this to be super valuable for my listeners and my viewers, because I think when it comes to launches, we all hear about it, we see them, and yet there's this, I'm a failure if, right? I'm a failure if I don't make this much. I'm a failure if I don't have this many people. I'm a failure if my ads don't work.
Yeah.
And I think it's just giving people permission, right, to continue to show up, to test, and know that it's all just part of the journey. And there are people that can help you. Like, hello, there's someone like Destinee that you can actually hire that will make sure that you're not, throwing your time, money, and energy down the drain, because that's what I see a lot of people doing as well.
Yeah. All true. Love it.
Yes, sister. So, what does inspired living mean to you?
It means being courageous enough to own our path and to own our calling. And for me, it's about giving ourselves the permission. And you're right. Like, we are lucky that we live in a place in the world that as women, we can choose to do this, but to really give ourselves the permission to say, this is who I am. This is what I want to do. And regardless of inherited voices from family, from society, not that you have to choose to be an outcast, but to really be who you are and say, this is my path and this is what I'm going to choose to do. And never before have we been able to express this out through the internet. And that's what I want for every entrepreneur, every person.
Yeah. It really is incredible what we're able to do through the interwebs. Like, it's really amazing. Like, look at these. We have these billion-dollar assets at our fingertips. You don't have to audition. You don't have to wait for someone to find you. You don't, you really don't even need to pay. You just have to commit to show up. And I think that's pretty phenomenal.
Agreed.
So thank you for showing up with me today. Such a pleasure to have you. If someone's interested in working with you, connecting with you, learning more about how you can help them launch what it is that they have to put out into the world, what do they do?
Destinee Burman, my website. We've got free trainings. We got free resources, including a launch guide that's going to walk you through the steps. We've really simplified it for you. And then Instagram is a great way to connect with us. Des Berman. We connect with new folks there all the time.
Amazing. We'll make sure to post all of those links, and that resource sounds amazing. A launch guide. Who does not want a step-by-step launch guide? Go get it. Go get it. And then tell her how amazing it is on Instagram. Is there anything that you want to leave us with? Maybe like your number one piece of advice?
Yeah, I would say that if you're thinking about doing this, like if you know and you have this yearning that you want to get your work out online, or you're looking to grow your work online, what I would suggest is to trust that instinct and the best you can to quiet all the voices within. Oh, I don't know tech. I'm not a digital native. I don't want to show my whole life on Instagram. Like, these are all common concerns that we have. And if you're willing to just let that be, there are ways to get your work out there in a creative way. Even if you feel like I can't do video, or even if I can't do a webinar, well, one, you can learn how to, but you can find your most creative ways. Like, I have clients who've done ceremony online when they thought they couldn't do a webinar. And so to trust that and to find your signature, and that the world will receive that.
So beautiful. Thank you for that. And thank you so much for joining me today. It was really wonderful to have you.
Thanks so much for having me. I love this conversation.
We'll have many more. You've just heard another uplifting episode of Inspired Living with Carrie Murphy, the podcast. I hope you loved it. If you haven't yet, please subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. And if you'd like to know more about Inspired Living, or to get your hands on many of our awesome free resources, such as the Be Studio Ready Guide, simply visit us at inspiredliving.tv/podcast. Remember, your vision is your destiny, and we're here to help you bring it to life. Join me again next week for another extraordinary episode.